Low, distant rumble of wind. Faint dog barking. It was 2:27 in the morning when I heard the first knock. A dull thunk-thunk against the glass of my bedroom window. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. I'd been awake, hunched over my phone, rereading the same paragraph of my thesis for the 100th time. My father was already asleep in the next room. My mother, who has always been a light sleeper, had gone to bed hours earlier. Our small house sat on the edge of town, where the paved road gave way to dusty tracks and a single old neem tree leaned across our porch like a watchman. No one should have been outside. Not at this hour. I held my breath, staring at the curtain. It shifted a little with the night breeze. Maybe just a branch? Maybe a bird? I shook my head, chuckled at my own nerves, and turned back to my laptop. And then, another knock. 2 sharp taps, heavier this time, right on the wooden front door. Thack-thack. Silence. My chest tightened. I glanced at the clock again. 2:28. Who the hell comes knocking at this hour? For a moment I considered ignoring it, but the sound had been so deliberate, like a signal. I stood, tied the cord of my pajama pants, and padded barefoot across the cool tiles. The house was dark except for the humming tube light above the veranda. My fingers hovered over the bolt before I slid it back, just enough to peek through the peephole. Nothing, just the empty street, the crooked neem tree swaying in the wind, and the faint glow of the streetlight down the road. No figure, no movement. I exhaled, almost laughing again at myself. Stress, sleep deprivation, imagination. I turned to go back to my room. That's when it came again. Thack-thack. But this time, the sound wasn't from the front door. It was from the kitchen, inside the house. Slow creak of floorboards. Every muscle in me went rigid. My mind scrambled for explanations. A rat? A loose shutter? But no. It was the same rhythm. 2 perfect knocks. I forced myself to move, clutching my phone like a weapon, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The kitchen was in darkness. The bulb had blown a week ago, and we hadn't replaced it. I stepped closer, the tiles groaning under my feet, and pushed open the door. A wave of cold air brushed past me, like stepping into a cellar. The jars on the shelves sat where they always did. The window was latched, but when I lowered my phone toward the floor, I froze. 2 wet handprints, tiny, child-sized palms pressed against the lowest wooden shelf. The prints glistened as if freshly made, beads of water dripping to the floor. Drip, drip, silence. I wanted to run, to scream, to wake my parents. Instead, I just stood there, my throat locked, staring at those hands that had no owner. And then, faint but clear, right beside my ear, came a whisper. "Don't come in." That broke me. I staggered back, slammed the door shut, and ran down the hallway, banging on my father's door. He woke with a start, rubbing his eyes, and I babbled out everything. About the knocks, the handprints, the whisper. He didn't laugh. He didn't call me crazy. He just grabbed a flashlight, muttered a prayer under his breath, and walked with me back to the kitchen. We opened the door together. Nothing. The shelf was dry. The floor was spotless, no sign of water or hands. My father closed the door again, looked me in the eye, and said softly, "Sometimes the dead don't rest. But they cannot hurt you if you don't invite them." He touched my shoulder, whispered a verse, and told me to go back to bed. I lay awake the rest of the night, lights on, heart pounding. Every creak of the house, every brush of wind against the shutters, I flinched. But the knocks didn't return. The next morning, as sunlight cut across the veranda, I dared to check the outside wall near the neem tree. At first glance, it was just old cement and patches of moss. But then I saw them. 2 pale marks, small and round, like water-stained fingerprints. They were higher than any child could reach, and too evenly spaced to be random. I pressed my own hand against them. The size was wrong, half mine at most, and still faintly damp, as though the wall itself had sweated during the night. I scrubbed them away with a wet rag, trying to tell myself it was just moisture, a trick of the weather. Yet that night, when the house went quiet again, I kept my light on and my back against the wall waiting, listening. The knocks never came again. But sometimes, when the power cuts out and the wind rattles the neem leaves against my window, I swear I can hear it. Thack, thack, 2 knocks. Always 2. And I still don't know what was asking me not to come inside. Long silence. Fade out with faint knocking sound. When I was 19, I worked nights at a diner off the highway. It wasn't glamorous, greasy counters, stale coffee, regulars who sat in the same booths every night. But it paid the bills. Closing shift meant I walked out just after 2 a.m., apron still smelling like bacon and burnt toast. Most nights I drive home on autopilot, the road empty except for the occasional truck roaring past. One Tuesday, everything felt off. The air was too still, too warm for late autumn. My shift had dragged on, the fryer had broken, and I just wanted to collapse in bed. I trudged across the parking lot, yawning, fumbling for my keys. My little hatchback sat under a buzzing streetlight. That's when I noticed the back door was unlocked. It startled me because I always locked up. I shook it off, told myself I must have been tired when I parked earlier. I got in, threw my bag on the passenger seat, started the engine, and began the 15-minute drive home. The first few minutes were normal. Radio humming, yellow lines flicking past. But then I felt it. The weight. That prickling awareness at the back of your neck when someone's watching you. My rearview mirror caught a shadow in the back seat. I laughed nervously at myself. "It's just your jacket," I muttered. But my jacket was hanging on the hook by the door at home. Faint breathing sound. I gripped the wheel tighter. Every hair on my arm stood up. I forced myself to glance again, quickly. For a split second I thought I saw a knee. Someone crouched behind the passenger seat, trying to make themselves small. My stomach dropped. The highway stretched empty in both directions. If I slammed the brakes and ran, would I even have time before they grabbed me? My phone buzzed with a text. My best friend asking if I got off work okay. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. And then, just as I was about to reply, I heard it. A whisper. Low, raspy. "Don't stop." I froze. I didn't imagine that. My rearview mirror showed the faint outline of a man's face in the shadows, lips close to my ear. He was inside the car. I did the only thing I could think of. I flicked on the high beams, slammed the accelerator, and aimed straight for the all-night gas station up the road. My tires squealed, my heart hammering. The man in the back seat hissed, "Slow down." I didn't. I swerved into the gas station lot, laid on the horn, and threw open the driver's door while the car was still rolling. I tumbled onto the pavement and screamed. The attendant inside jumped, grabbed a bat, and ran out. But the back seat was empty. The door was still locked from the inside. There was no one there. Just my bag, tipped over, books scattered across the upholstery. I stammered, trying to explain what I'd seen, but the attendant only frowned. "You probably dozed off driving. Shadows play tricks." I almost believed him, until I noticed something he didn't. On the inside of my fogged-up rear window, traced in a childlike scrawl, were 2 words written with a fingertip. "Thank you." Pause. Low static hum. I never drove that road home again. I still don't know what I saved myself from. Whether there really was a man crouched there, or whether something else altogether had warned me. But every so often, when my car windows fog up in the early morning, I check the glass. And sometimes, just sometimes, I can still see the faint outline of those 2 letters, as if they'd been pressed into the glass permanently. Distant knocking sound. Cut to silence. My cousin Sammy moved into a flat that had been sitting empty for years. It was one of those old colonial buildings at the edge of the city, with cracked tiles, high ceilings, and an elevator that groaned like it wanted to die. The rent was suspiciously cheap, but Sammy didn't care. He just wanted his own place. The landlord handed him the keys with a look that should have been a warning. "Keep the windows shut at night," the man said. "And if you hear anyone knocking after midnight, don't answer." He laughed like it was a joke. Sammy laughed too, shrugged it off, and signed the lease. The first week went smoothly. The place smelled of dust, but nothing a few incense sticks couldn't fix. Sammy worked late shifts at the hospital, so most nights he came home after 1 or 2 in the morning. He'd collapse into bed and sleep till noon. But on the 8th night, it started, at exactly 12:15 a.m. Just as Sammy was brushing his teeth in the bathroom, he heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, deliberate. He froze, toothpaste foaming in his mouth. He lived alone. He spat, grabbed the mop by the sink, and tiptoed out. The hallway was empty. Door shut. Shadows pooling in the corners. He checked the locks twice. Everything seemed fine. He told himself it was probably the neighbors. Thin walls, old pipes, something ordinary. The next night, again at 12:15, knock knock. 2 crisp taps at his bedroom door. He jumped out of bed, swung it open. Nothing. Just the stillness of the hallway again. By the 3rd night, he was spooked enough to call me. I remember the tremor in his voice. "It's not my imagination," he whispered over the phone. Every night, same time. 2 knocks. Like someone's waiting for me to let them in. I told him to come stay at my place. He refused. "Rent's cheap. I'm not leaving over some creaky pipes." He laughed, but it was hollow. Then, a few days later, he showed me something that killed my laughter too. On the inside of his bedroom door, just below the handle, were 2 faint marks. Small, pale handprints pressed into the wood. I touched them. They were cold. Sammy tried everything. Incense, prayers, even salt at the threshold like some kind of folk ritual. But every night, 12:15, 2 knocks. Sometimes it was the bedroom door. Sometimes the kitchen cupboards. Once, horrifyingly, it came from the inside of his wardrobe. He stopped sleeping. His eyes sank into dark circles. He started showing up late to work, jumpy, irritable. One Friday night, after a double shift, he called me again. "I think it's getting bolder," he whispered. I came home, and the bathroom mirror was fogged up. Written on it were the words, "Still here." But I hadn't even turned on the shower. That was the last night he stayed there. He packed a bag and came to my place. We agreed we'd go back in the morning, pack up his things, and tell the landlord he was leaving. But when we arrived, something made my stomach twist. The front door was wide open. Inside, the apartment looked lived in. Not by Sammy, though. Plates on the counter with half-eaten food. A glass of water that hadn't been there the night before. His clothes strewn everywhere, but not the way he'd left them. They were damp, as if someone had pulled them from a river. And the bedroom, the handprints on the door weren't faint anymore. They were wet, dark, fresh. A pair of small hands, dripping red. Sammy bolted. He refused to step inside. I followed him out, not wanting to be alone in that place. We told the landlord what we saw, and his face went pale. He finally admitted that the last tenant had been a young woman, barely older than Sammy, who drowned in the bathtub. No one wanted to live there after that. Every new renter had left within a month. Sammy never went back for his things. He left them all, clothes, books, even his new TV. The landlord didn't argue. It's been 2 years. Sammy lives with roommates now, in a bright apartment with too many windows and never enough locks. He won't even stay overnight anywhere without checking the doors 3 times. Last winter, though, he woke up at 12:15 again. He was on the couch, his roommates asleep in their rooms, the television playing some late-night rerun. He swore he heard it. 2 soft knocks, right on the wall behind him. When he turned, the frost on the window pane had 2 small handprints pressed into it. Silence. Then 2 sharp knocks echo.